reel it in. Watching that fiasco that played out in front of our face, and then the comments after the game where Stephanie White refuses to answer a direct question about Caitlin Clark and her performance last night. And my goodness, the fallout, the nuclear fallout from last night's game is wild. You got calls for boycotts right now.
The fallout from the Indiana Fever's latest loss has escalated rapidly, with large portions of the fan base now openly calling for a boycott of home games. The demand is straightforward. Stephanie White must be removed as head coach, and the front office leadership surrounding her must follow. The names being directed toward the exit include Amber Cox and Kelly Christoph alongside White herself. The arena told part of the story on its own. Approximately 1,600 seats sat empty during the game, a sharp contrast to the 7,000 who showed up for a preseason contest and the near-sellout crowds that were routine throughout the 2024 home schedule, when only 3 games failed to reach capacity, and 2 of those fell short by just a few hundred attendees. That attendance trajectory, if the current situation continues, is pointing in one direction. The press conference exchange in which White deflected a direct question about Caitlin Clark's fourth-quarter performance without acknowledging Clark by name has become the defining image of the backlash.
Last night's game is wild. You got calls for boycotts right now. Jason Whitlock is calling for a boycott until everybody is fired with the Indiana Fever front office and Stephanie White. Kelly Crosskoff, see ya. Amber Cox, get out. Stephanie White, pack your bags. Hell, go back to Connecticut. Oh, no, don't do that because they're coming to Texas. Go somewhere else. Go to Europe. Go.
Fans and commentators have described it as damaging in a way that will be difficult to walk back. The argument being made is that a coach who cannot publicly credit her best player after a historic individual performance has revealed something important about how she views the team's hierarchy. Fan reaction has been intense across platforms. The recurring theme in the commentary is that the preview organization drew 4,000 fans per game before Clark arrived, and the failure to build the entire system around her represents a fundamental misreading of the situation. The rotation decisions, specifically benching Clark during stretches in the first half when the offense was functioning well, have been described as some of the worst in-game management observers have seen. The second and third quarters, in particular, drew the sharpest criticism, with many pointing to those stretches as evidence that the coaching staff does not know how to sustain or extend a lead. Aliyah Boston's injury absence has added another layer of concern.
Go to Europe. Go call games with ESPN, which I think a lot of us believe maybe that's what you really want to do anyway. Lord knows you put enough time into it in the off season. Now Aliyah Boston is out. We don't know how long. We got no bigs on this team. And we got a coach that wants to diminish the best female athlete on the planet.
With no reliable interior presence available, the team's already fragile defensive structure becomes harder to stabilize, and the lack of a pick-and-roll partner for Clark limits what the offense can do in half-court settings. The argument being made is that Boston's value is almost entirely tied to functioning alongside Clark in those two-player actions. And without that, the roster construction reveals its limitations. The belief gaining traction among critics is that White views Kelsey Mitchell as the team's primary player. A read, they say, is supported by the visible difference in how White responds to Mitchell on the sideline compared to Clark, the difference in post-game praise, and the decision to give Mitchell the final shot attempt late in regulation. Despite Clark having been dominant in the closing minutes, Mitchell also reportedly finished 2 consecutive games without recording an assist or a rebound. A statistical line that has not softened the criticism of those who feel the offense is being steered toward the wrong player. Some fans have begun drawing comparisons to former coaches who had different relationships with Clark. Sandy Brondello's departure before Clark's rookie season has been revisited, with the view that Brondello's appreciation for Clark's abilities would have produced a more compatible environment. Christie sides, despite her own difficulties, had at least arrived at the conclusion by the final weeks of last season that the offense needed to run through Clark above all else.
Planet. I want you to think about this a minute. They have the best female athlete on the planet. The most dynamic, the most exciting. And she's got a coach on her own team that don't even think she's the best player. Pack your bags and get out of the facility. Indiana Fever, just a little while ago.
The question being raised now is whether this coaching staff ever reached that conclusion and whether the organization has the willingness to make a change before the damage becomes permanent. The case against Stephanie White is not that she is undermining Caitlin Clark deliberately. There is no evidence of sabotage. The play that tied the game was drawn up for Clark specifically. A coach trying to lose does not do that. When Clark deviates from the game plan and it works, White keeps her on the floor regardless of what the rotation schedule says. The issue is something more fundamental than intent. The issue is philosophy.
Shout out to the best fans. See you at Gamebridge tomorrow. Boy, they're trying. By the way, 1,600 empty seats last night. 1,600. And that's after 7,000 in one of their the preseason games. I went back to 2024. 20 home games.
White has publicly noted, in language that echoed former broadcaster Carolyn Peck, that the team is harder to scout when Clark is not on the floor. That statement is a window into how she thinks about offense. Her ideal system is one where no single player is the fixed center of gravity, where any of the 5 players on the court can create, score post up, or slash at any given moment. If an opposing coaching staff cannot identify who the primary threat is, they cannot build a defensive structure to stop it. That is the theory. The problem is that Clark does not fit that theory, not because she lacks the skill, but because everyone in the league already knows what Clark wants to do and how she does it.
I went back to 2024. 20 home games, 3 were not sellouts all year. 3. And 2 of the non-sellouts were very close to being sellouts, like within a few hundred fans. After last night, shit, good luck. Calls for boycotts. Shout out to fans. Let's just bring this up. Shout out to fans. Fans were amazing. They were a huge reason we were able to get back in the game. Caitlin Clark.
She wants tempo. She wants pace before defenses are set. She wants to push until something breaks, and she is extraordinarily good at it. But in White's framework, predictability, even elite, nearly unstoppable predictability, is a liability. So what White has been attempting is to reshape Clark into a different kind of player, a motion offense participant.
And we were able to get back in the game, Caitlin Clark. We love seeing that from Caitlin. But the Fever, now they can save it. Only if Steph White's work key stops working. In other words, quit letting her in the building. Boycott the games until Stephanie White is fired. The fans won't be there anytime soon unless you fire Stephanie White.
A cog, someone who moves without the ball, executes the set play, and dumps the ball into the post when the design calls for it. Clark has not fully bought into this, and honestly the numbers suggest
she is right not to. Every time Indiana has been aggressive and up-tempo, they have looked like a legitimate contender. Every time they have settled into half-court passivity, they have looked
ordinary. The chess match versus blitzkrieg framing captures it cleanly.
The fans won't be there anytime soon unless you fire Stephanie White. We are fed up when Stephanie White benches Caitlin Clark in the first quarter and the offense was flowing. That was criminal. That second and third quarter is some of the worst coaching I've ever seen in all my life. Screw all the front office, especially Stephanie White. This organization is pathetic to let a coach just blow all their money and all-star away. Simon family, I hope you go broke. Wow.
White wants to outthink opponents over a long possession, win the tactical exchange, control what can be controlled. Clark wants to overwhelm opponents before they have time to think at all. Both approaches have produced winning basketball at various levels of the game, but they require entirely different personnel arrangements, and Indiana's roster, built around Clark, is structured for the second approach, not the first. White would actually be better served by that system with two conventional isolation scorers rotating possessions. With that kind of lineup, no one on the opposing bench knows who is getting the ball next.
Working, she's not going to sub her off. She'll just be pissed off on the sideline. She's still not going to sub her off because I think she knows that you can't, and she knows sometimes trying to win games, you gotta feed the hot hand. And she's not going to give it to Kelsey, who missed all her threes, other than the one before that. She's going to let the person who hit 4 threes in the fourth quarter shoot the last 3. And that's where the whole sabotaging has gone.
With Clark, everyone knows. And for most coaches, knowing does not help. Because knowing what Clark is going to do and stopping it are two different problems entirely. White, however, views the predictability itself as the weakness. The result is that Clark has gone rogue in crucial moments, taking over games in ways that diverge from the play design. And it has sometimes worked brilliantly, and sometimes stalled. What the data does not show is what Clark might produce if the system were actually built around her strengths rather than in tension with them. Her greatest asset is probably her.
But what I'm going to say here is Stephanie White does not want Caitlin Clark as to coach Caitlin Clark. The player, not the person. Stephanie White, not the person, not the collection of skill set that Caitlin Clark has. Stephanie White wants Caitlin Clark to fit into her system.
Her second greatest is her ability to control the tempo of a game entirely. Not just her own production, but the pace at which everyone around her operates. White's system, by design, actively suppresses that. Clark has acknowledged on a podcast that she knew hitting a 4th consecutive 3 would irritate her coach. Separately, there were moments late in games where she held the ball, rather than making an obvious pass. With several minutes still These are not the behaviors of a player who has been given freedom to operate according to her strengths. These are the behaviors of a player managing around a system that does not fit her.
Fit into her system, run her set offenses, dump the ball in, be an off the ball player, and basically play as a cog in a motion offense. Do you want to know why that is? And I listened back on the blessing in disguise quote, and I listened to the full quote, and I actually got a full, you can kind of hear what Stephanie White says.
The substitution decisions compound the problem. Clark is a rhythm player. She goes through quiet stretches, 4 or 5 minutes where she is not scoring or assisting, and then she erupts. The correct move is to leave her in through those quiet stretches when the game is live and she is locked in, and bring her off during genuine lulls when nothing is happening over 90 seconds or more. Instead, rotations appear to be driven by preset intervals. Clark has been pulled mid-run, in the middle of sequences where she was clearly finding her footing, and the momentum has died immediately.
She basically repeated what Carolyn Peck says, that she said, we're much harder to scout without Caitlin Clark. And this is why she doesn't want Caitlin Clark. And if you guys don't know how Caitlin Clark's philosophy of basketball, and by the way, if you are absolutely the best in the world at any philosophy of basketball, you can win. You can absolutely win.
Coaching in real time is harder than evaluating from a distance. That is genuinely true, but the gap between what Indiana has been doing with the most impactful guard in the league and what could be done with her is large enough that it is not a small sample problem or a product of hindsight. It is a structural mismatch between a coaching philosophy and a player who is, at this point in the sports history, larger than the program around her. Stephanie White is coaching the only way she knows how. Unfortunately, the only way she knows how does not fit the player she has.
Caitlin Clark has not bought into Stephanie White's system whatsoever. We're not fully bought in. But even not fully buying in, what is it causing the system? Worse spacing, players in worse positions, the ball ending up in people's hands that shouldn't be dribbling. No system should have Lexi Hull taking up the ball. Because it should be Caitlin, Kelsey, or Leah. They don't run to or through Caitlin or Leah enough. They've stopped running through Caitlin. And that's the difference here. Is the Stephanie White motion offense is an equal opportunity offense that doesn't run through any players. And ironically, if players don't stay aggressive, the Steph White offense is literally, and I'm not talking about quick hitters. There is a difference between style of playing quick hitters. Like the Indiana Fever run a couple of quick hitters to get Caitlin to get Kelsey open, that's fine. That's fine. Every team should have some quick hitters. I'm talking about the overall tactics and overall system that they want to play. So, Stephanie White, Caitlin Clark wants to blitzkrieg opponents. Caitlin Clark wants the ball in the basket, whether it be her or somebody else, before the other team can set up on defense. Caitlin Clark's philosophy is, if we are relentless, they won't stop us. And up to this point in her WNBA career, that has been factually correct. They won't stop us. And up to this point in her WNBA career, that has been factually correct. Whenever the Indiana Fever have been aggressive, not passive, they've looked like one of the best teams in the league. They were passive in the playoffs in 2025. They were passive coming into the playoffs. They were in a bit of bad form. Teams struggle to stop an aggressive Indiana Fever. That being said, there is a flaw to that, and it's if a team can stop it, you can either shoot badly, or if a team can slow you down, you can struggle. The way Steph White